Who are they?
No one. They are ghosts of a life that no longer matters. But they are nosy, and they are persistent, and they will not see you.
Willow was true to her word. The moment the bolt slid back at dawn, she dressed in the powder pink silk maxi dress he had requested. High-necked, balloon-sleeved, modest to the point of reverence. The fabric flowed down her slight frame, turning her into something curated and deliberate, doll-like. But it gave her something more important than beauty. It hid the bruises completely. For the first time in days, her body was allowed the dignity of concealment. Eden noticed. He led her towards the third-floor infirmary with his gaze fixed on her the entire way. His attention almost tactile. He commented on her femininity, on the way the dress softened her, refined her.
"This is how every girl should look,"
he said,
"if she had an ounce of pride or self-respect."
She nodded at the right moments, lowered her eyes when expected. What surprised her was not his admiration, but his restraint. Surprisingly, when they left the infirmary, he didn't hover. He left quickly to tend to his state duties. She knew the cameras were watching, so she acted with purpose. She opened the heavy journals, she cleaned the antique surgical tools with a cloth, and she sat by the window, appearing to be deep in study. But as she leaned over a volume on pharmacology, her eyes weren't on the text. They were on the medical cabinet's glass door. Behind the locked glass, she saw rows of brown glass vials. Her nurse's training allowed her to read the faded Latin labels from across the room. Chloral Hydrate, morphine sulfate, ether. Eden's mother hadn't just been a surgeon. Toward the end, she had clearly been an apothecary of her own pain. Willow realized that while the doors to the house were made of oak and iron, the man who held the key was made of flesh and blood. And blood could be slowed. Blood could be put to sleep. Willow spent the day in a state of hyper-focused calm. She sat at the mahogany desk, a heavy volume of cardiovascular surgery propped open, while her mind worked on a separate, lethal track. She noticed that the glass of the medical cabinet was old, weary, and thin. The lock was a simple wafer tumbler, something a steady hair clip or a thin metal spatula could potentially bypass. She forced herself to stay immersed in the books, and to her surprise, she found the prose of Eden's mother captivating. The woman had been a genius, writing about the human body with a mixture of reverence and cold, hard logic. Willow found herself underlining passages, genuinely lost in the complex medical puzzle, for a moment forgetting the cameras. The piece was shattered at 4 p.m. The doors to the infirmary didn't just open, they hit the wall with a violent crack. Willow jumped, her heart leaping into her throat. Eden stood in the doorway, but the gentleman was gone. His face was a mask of rigid, pale tension. His jaw set so hard the muscles jumped. He didn't look at the books, or the progress she had made. He looked past her, towards the window that faced the long, winding driveway of the estate.
Eden? What's wrong?
Willow asked, standing up and closing the book. He didn't answer. He crossed the room in 3 long, controlled strides. He grabbed her upper arm, not with the gentle possessiveness of the night before, but with a bruising, frantic strength.
"We're going. Now!"
he hissed, his voice low and jagged.
You're hurting me,
she whispered, but he didn't seem to hear her. He hauled her out of the infirmary and down the servants' staircase, avoiding the main hall. Through the narrow window of the stairwell, Willow caught a glimpse of movement. 2 sleek black cars were pulling up to the front portico. Men in expensive suits were stepping out. Lawyers, perhaps, or business associates of his late father.
Who are they?
She panted, struggling to keep up with his long, angry strides.
"No one."
Eden snapped, his eyes darting towards the front of the house as the doorbell echoed through the mansion, a sound that felt like a bridge to the outside world.
"They are ghosts of a life that no longer matters, but they are nosy, and they are persistent, and they will not see you."
He practically threw her into the master suite, his breathing ragged. He stood in the doorway for a moment, his eyes scanning her, the pink dress, her blonde hair, as if making sure she was still a solid object, and not a vapor that could leak through the marble floors.
You stay here.
He commanded, pointing a finger at her. The mask of the perfect lover had slipped, revealing the terrified, controlling child underneath.
You do not move from this room. You do not make a sound. If I hear so, much as a door creak, I will ensure you never see the sun again. Do you understand me, Willow?
The raw threat in his voice was chilling. This was the man who had ruined Mark. This was the man who had let his father's body go cold while he planned her captivity.
I understand,
She whispered, backing away from him. He slammed the door, and the bolt slid home with a violent force. Through the heavy wood, she heard him sprinting back towards the foyer, his voice shifting instantly back into a polished, welcoming baritone as he greeted his guest. Willow stood in the center of the room, her arm throbbing where he had grabbed her. There were people in the house. There were witnesses. People who knew he lived here. People who could save her. She looked at the window, then at the camera in the corner. She knew she could scream. For the first time, Eden's attention was divided.
Would they hear me and come running? Or would my scream only join his collection, captured, replayed, and used to justify the punishment he'd promised?
The silence of the suite was absolute, save for the muffled, rhythmic thud of Willow's own heart. Downstairs, she could hear the faint vibration of men's voices, the low hum of business, the clinking of crystal, the mundane sounds of a world she used to belong to. She stood frozen by the bed. Her nursing instinct told her to move, to signal, to use this window of distraction. But an older, more deeply rooted instinct took over, the one forged in the cramped trailer with Mark and from the houses of her childhood, where voices were raised like weapons, and silence was the only shield that ever worked.
Don't draw attention. Don't escalate. Don't give them something to react to.
She knew this version of Eden. She had recognized it the moment his tone shifted, the velvet peeled back to reveal the glass beneath. This was not a man to interrupt. This was a man to endure. So she didn't scream. She didn't yell from the balcony, or test the glass, or pace the room like a trapped animal. Those were mistakes made by people who believed rescue was immediate, inevitable. Instead, she shrank. It wasn't conscious. Her body simply remembered what to do. Her shoulders curved inward. Her breathing thinned. She sat on the edge of the bed, with her hands folded tight in her lap, and fixed her gaze on a single knot in the rug. Be small. Be still. Be forgettable. She learned that skill young, sitting on the floor while adults shouted above her, counting the cracks in the linoleum, learning how to disappear without leaving the room. Silence had never meant surrender. It had meant waiting out the storm. Time lost its shape. The light shifted slowly, almost kindly. The sun sank, drawing long shadows across the floor until the room settled in an indigo dusk. She didn't move. Not when her legs cramped, not when her mouth went dry, not when her thoughts began to blur at the edges. Stillness had kept her alive before. She trusted it now. Finally, the sound of the car engines drifted up through the room. The guests were leaving. A few minutes later, the heavy front door slammed shut, followed by the slow, deliberate footsteps of Eden returning up the stairs. The bolt slid back. Eden entered. He looked undone. His tie hung loosely around his collar, his eyes red-rimmed, the sharp edge of adrenaline finally dulling. He stopped short when he saw her exactly where he'd left her. Spine straight, hands folded, face emptied of expression. Relief washed over him.
Good girl,
He breathed, as though releasing a burden. He crossed the room and sank to his knees, pressing his face into her lap like a penitent.
I'm sorry I was rough.
His voice thickened.
They were aggressive, probate, the holdings. They wanted to poke into my life, into our lives.
He looked up at her then, eyes glassy, earnest in his gratitude.
You stayed silent. You stayed for me. I knew I could trust you.
She did not correct him. She knew the truth. She hadn't stayed for him. She stayed because she'd learned, long before Eden, that silence could be the difference between surviving and not. Willow didn't pull away when he took her hands and kissed her bruised knuckles. She even managed a small robotic nod.
I did what you asked, Eden.
I know, and I'll reward you for it.
He whispered. He stayed there for a while, basking in her compliance, before eventually leaving to settle his nerves. The moment the doors locked again, the mask shattered. Willow didn't cry. Instead, she walked to the bathroom and scrubbed her hands until the skin was raw. She looked at herself in the mirror, a visceral wave of self-loathing washing over her. She hated her own fear. She hated the way her body had automatically bowed to a bully, just because it was a rhythm she knew by heart.
Never again,
She told her reflection, her green eyes hardening into something sharp and measured.
I played the doll because I was scared, but I'm a nurse. And a nurse knows how to handle a patient who has become a danger to themselves and others.
She thought of the infirmary wing. She had been good. She had earned his trust, and now she was going to use it to gut him.
If you like this video, be sure to like this video. And if you made it to the end, you're officially my hero. Leave a comment saying which superhero could break Willow out of this billionaire's beautiful prison. Till next time.